Okay, so put you guys there. You can see the back window, and if there's any mess back there, I'm really sorry about it. Okay, so I know I've talked about recent events past couple of days, so I figured today I'd give you guys a history and kind of explain where I'm coming from, why I believe the way I do, why I think the way I do. And, I mean, honestly, nobody else is going to really care, so, at least I'm getting it out there. Some of it's going to be really difficult for me to talk about because it does bring up bad memories, and some of it I do gloss over because, again, bad memories. I don't like being negative, but life has a way of really fucking you over. When my mom was pregnant with me back in 1984-85, yes, I am either old or young, depending on who's watching this. My dad always wanted his firstborn to be a boy. Back then, they didn't have ultrasounds or the ability to, see the gender of the baby. So, my dad really, really wanted a boy. Of course, when I was born, the doctor said it's a girl. My dad was overjoyed just the fact that I was healthy, but in the back of his mind, he always wanted a boy. So him being with the military, him having an Army background and a Marine background, he purposed it that I would be raised with a military background and be raised as if I was a boy. Of course, I never got dressed as a boy or forced to play with boys, like boy games and things like that. But I was expected to know how to play sports. I was expected to be active. I was expected to do the running and the jumping. I was expected to know how to not only fire a gun, but also how to handle a gun, handle a knife, protect myself in any fight. Training was really top notch from my dad. At times I would feel like I should have been just in the military my entire life because that's how he raised me. I don't remember much. I remember stories. My mother tells me that when they went to go prick my foot for the blood test, I cried, and he came barreling in and just about knocked the doctor through the wall for making me cry. She tells me that he was really protective over me when I was younger. Unfortunately, I wish he had stayed protective over me. My dad had multiple affairs throughout the marriage with him and my mom, and I'm not an idiot. I know he did. My first memory is of one of his exes on the military base. I was about 3 years old. We were living in California, and one of his exes had claimed that she was pregnant with his child, and because he refused to leave my mother for her, she had me molested. I remember having to go through therapy. I don't remember much about it. I remember there was some dolls involved, and hey, what doll touched you, or this doll here is a little sad. Why is this all sad, kind of thing. And that's about it. I remember that she had half black hair, half white hair, kind of like not like a Cruella de Vil type of hairstyle, but like her roots were dark and the tips of her hair was white. But that's all the memories that I have. As far as like my formative years, I remember by the time I was 7 years old, I started developing into a young lady, and my father still wanted me to act like a boy, hang out with the boys, and I remember child. What did I know? I started having issues with breathing around the same time. Unbeknownst to me or my parents, my tonsils and head glands had grown to the point where they were crushing my esophagus. I couldn't breathe at night, especially when I laid down. It got to the point where my dad was like, he was finally like, enough is enough, she can't breathe. I don't think she's faking this anymore, let's take her to the hospital. And that was always my dad's thing. We never went to the hospital unless it was obvious that we weren't faking it. And by that point, they had gotten so bad that after the surgery, I developed a really bad infection. Wound up having to stay for about a week. I remember they didn't have any beds in the children's ward, so I had to stay in the maternity ward. I remember every day walking past the nursery and seeing the newborn babies. I remember my roommate giving birth. And I remember her and her husband being moved to another room during that process. I remember them calling me to that room so that way I could see the new baby. And that was my next memory. I remember my dad telling me a story about how he fought in, I believe it was Panama. I think it was the Panama Canal. And I know it couldn't have been the Gulf. I don't think he would have been young enough to, I don't know. It was one of those wars back in the 80s, early 90s. Anyways, I remember him telling me that when I was younger, he had to go, and I was scared that I would never see him again, and he told me that he was taking the boogeyman away, so that way I wouldn't be scared at night. My next memory that I have is at the age of 13. So I had a couple of years there. At the age of 13, my dad wanted to be the deacon at the church. And one of his friends was already a deacon. And his friend's son, who was 5 years older than me, had taken a shine to me. Wanted to get to know me. So my dad set me to the side and he said, Amanda, you're 13 years old. It's going to be close to the time when you're going to start dating. And I want you to remember that no matter whether or not you are attracted to the guy, if anybody shows you interest, you are to at least give them one chance. And you are to make them as happy as possible and do whatever they want, because this might be the person that you're meant to spend the rest of your life with. Fast forward 3 months later, it's Christmas time. And this guy is wanting me over for Christmas. His parents promised my parents that they would never leave the two of us alone. Or at least his mom promised my mom. My dad could care less. But they had decided they were going to go to bed. They were going to leave us to watch TV. He said, hey Amanda, do you want to play a game? I'm like, well, we're going to have to be quiet about it. Your parents are asleep. And he was like, oh, don't worry, we'll be very quiet. In fact, I've got something to make sure that you stay quiet, and I'll be quiet. And he then proceeds to tie a handkerchief around my mouth and gag me so that I can't talk or muffle or anything. Start getting a little scared. sunk into a deep, deep depression. And that is when I first became acquainted with the sweet kiss of death. I tried to commit suicide. The very first time. My mom caught me. I got rushed to the hospital, had my stomach pumped. And I was forced to say what happened. My dad tells me at that point in time that he never meant for me to accept being raped when he told me that I needed to do whatever made the guy happy. But the damage was already done. He is wanting to have charges pressed against the kid. And my mom is sitting there telling me, Amanda, you need to tell him that you made it up, that you weren't raped, that you allowed him to have sex with you, because if you don't, your dad's going to go to jail. And I'm like, well, why is dad going to go to jail if he's having the cops press charges against this guy? And she said, because your dad's not going to stop at just having charges pressed against him. He's going to go over there and he's going to beat the ever-loving shit out of him. And then your dad's going to go to jail for beating up a minor. So, because my dad was the only one that was working and my mom never worked a day in her life, to save the family, I recanted. Told my dad that I made it up, that it was all consensual. And that marked the beginning of when I started getting sick. I don't know if my parents ever got financial reimbursement, I guess would be the right word. I don't know if they ever got that for what they put me through. The next guy that I was in a relationship with also raped me. Every relationship that I've had, aside from the one with Dave, has been one in which the guy has raped me. Even my ex-husband. Small of a dick as he had, he still would tie me up, force me to let him rub against me or whatever. So my oldest child is not a child of rape. I honestly meant to commit suicide that night. My friend said, well, if you're going to do this, then you need at least one last hoorah. She introduced me to my ex-husband, who then gave me one last hoorah, and even though his dick was too small and I couldn't feel it, by the time the time frame came for me to actually commit suicide, I told myself, you know, you did have sex 6 weeks ago. You haven't been feeling right for this entire time, you know, here recently. Better take a pregnancy test, because you don't want to take your life as well as another person's life. And you need to make sure that you're not making a decision for two, and that you're only making a decision for one. And pregnancy test came back so fast. It was not even 10 seconds, it was positive. And I said, well, damn. At first I thought I would just last until the end of the pregnancy, give my child to her father, and then go off somewhere, commit suicide, and that would be the end of it. My family had another plan. He forced me to get married. I was basically told that if I didn't marry him, then my child would go into foster care. My family would never allow him to raise my child. And I did not want that. I wanted my child to be in a safe environment, or what I felt would be a safe environment. So I was forced to marry him. We got married, and he immediately started sleeping around with his first wife and my best friend, the one who introduced us. Fast forward 2 kids later, the abuse has gotten to the point where I'm just like, one day at a time. As long as it's not affecting the kids, you can make it one more day. The straw that broke the camel's back is when I found out that his first wife was sexually abusing my stepchildren and allowing them to not only have sex with other adults, including herself and her husband at the time, but also have sex with each other. I found that out, and I tried my best to keep an eye to make sure that the children were never left alone with each other, that there was always an adult present at all times. But I was also going to school. I was pregnant with my youngest, and it was a really, really bad day that day. I was sick, I was hurting, my back hurt, my stomach hurt, I was throwing up, and I left school early that day. And I get home, and my ex-husband is nowhere around. And I don't know where he's at. The kids have been left by themselves. I don't know how long. I go upstairs and I hear my stepdaughter yelling at her brother. You're not supposed to do that here. Mommy said that you're not supposed to do that here. You only do that with me and at her house, not here. And I hear a thump. Of course, I rush up the stairs to find out what's going on. And my oldest daughter, who was 5 years old at the time, is naked from the waist down, laying on the bed with her legs spread open, and my stepson is sprawled out on the floor. And my stepdaughter says, Mom, Amanda, I am so sorry. He knows that he's not supposed to do that here. He knows he's only supposed to do that with me. I am so sorry. I did not know. And I saw red. Because now the abuse was affecting my children. Not only my children, but my stepkids as well. So I saw red. I called the cops. I called CPS. I called anybody and everybody. I called my ex-husband and I told him what was going on. And he was like, you better not call the cops. And I'm like, too late. He's like, you can't or have them arrest my son. And I was like, watch me. Of course they didn't. He was only 8 years old at the time, almost 9. He's considered a minor himself. We couldn't press charges against him, even if they wanted to. So that happened. When I told him it was too late, I had already called the cops. He rushed home. He flings me down the stairs. And we had those stairs that had half of them going up, and there was a landing, and then the other half going back the other way to lead to the second floor. So he flung me down two flights of stairs. Broke my arm. I had let me see if I can show you guys. There's a scar here, right here, where the bone actually came out of my wrist and was coming through here. It had to be shoved back. I was in a cast, and I swore at that point that nobody was ever going to hurt my kids again. I would do whatever it took to make sure that they were safe. And I said to myself that when the cast came off, I was going to pack my bags, pack what I needed for the kids, and we were going to leave. And that's what I did. We made it to Texas. We lived in a battered women's shelter in Texas for about 2 months before there was issues. The women there accused my kids of stealing cell phones and other items, and we were constantly having the room inspected. And then I leave to try to find work, and And I come back and I am told that I am no longer welcome at the battered women's shelter. And that if I wanted my stuff, I needed to get a police officer to come with me in order to be able to get it. I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't have any way of communications. I didn't have anything to call my name. So I went to McDonald's with 3 kids in tow. One of them still in diapers. There, a kind Christian man offered to let me stay at his place. I thought, he's a Christian. This is Texas. This is not North Carolina. Maybe he's actually a good Christian and he won't expect me to pay for my stay. Boy, was I wrong. He expected me to sleep with him and to have sex with him. And when I refused to do so, for 2 weeks, after 2 weeks, he dropped me off at another shelter. I stayed at that shelter for about 8 months. Trying to find work, trying to get back on my feet to take care of my kids. And I finally broke. I couldn't do it. Nobody would hire me because I lived in a shelter. I didn't have a permanent address. I didn't have a phone. I didn't have anything to be able to go to interviews. I didn't have clothes to be able to go to interviews. I had nothing. And they wouldn't hire me. So I broke. And I called my grandparents. And I begged them to let me stay with them. I moved in with my grandparents after living on the streets for almost a year. And they had me get Medicaid, which is in some places Access or state-funded health insurance. They made me apply for food stamps. They told me I needed to go back to school and to get a job, but I was only allowed to get a job in the town that we lived in, which used to be a mill town, where there was fabric mills and car parts, where car parts were being made, those kind of mills. But those mills were being shut down and sent overseas. There was no job security. And try as I might, I couldn't find a job with the mills. So I started professionally writing. And that brought in a little bit of cash, not much. I think during the highlight of that career as a professional writer, I made $400 in 1 year, which really sucked. But part of the payment for the rent that I had to do to stay there was I had to give them my food stamp card. And they would buy groceries. And they would be the ones who dictated what got paid when. I had no choice in the matter. I had no choice in what was bought. I had nothing. Benefits came in, gave them the card. When they ran them out, that was when I was able to have to come back. And heaven help if I spent any of those funds before they had a chance to do their grocery shopping. I was allowed to keep whatever funds I made from my writing, and I'm actually going to walk into the backyard with you guys, so that way I can be able to continue this at least for a little bit longer. Okay. So I was able to, nobody's here except for Sean and the kids, and they're upstairs. But I'm going to go in the backyard. I ignore the mess. There's a dog that lives here. anyways, so yeah, that was about the extent of my little attempt at freedom. So I found out the hard way that my ex-husband had actually committed fraud in my name. He took out credit cards and loans in my name. My credit was shot. I stayed with my grandparents for about 1.5 years before CPS called and told me that I was being reported for child abuse. I was told that because of my pagan religion, they needed to do an investigation to make sure that the reports that I was making the children be naked outside where anybody and everybody could see, that I was making them participate in blood magic and making them watch me have sex with strangers was not accurate. I was lucky that the CPS worker who was assigned to investigate it actually did her research, knew what she was talking about when she came to see me, and opted to be an open ear instead of a closed off ear. So they're doing their investigation, and not even a week has passed, and I'm getting another phone call from the CPS worker. Amanda, we need to get you out of there now, and you need to get out of the state. Can you get any money? I call my dad. My dad's like, well, I can help you out with a little bit, but I can't help you out with much. I call the social worker back, and I tell her, and she's like, well, whatever you can get, you need to get out. She arranged for me to have an escort to the state lines to prevent my family from being able to follow me, because apparently a report came in that CPS needed to lift the ban on my ex-husband having visitation or custody of the kids, because an event was going to happen to me, and that event was going to cause me to not be able to take care of my children, and that he needed to be granted the ability to take custody. And the threat was to the point where it worried the social worker that my grandparents or someone in my family was planning on doing something to harm me. So she rushed me out. She got me to the state line. Well, the officer did. And I left. I spent a month in Indiana with a friend of mine to kind of make sure that everything kind of cooled down. And then they helped me make the rest of the trip to Arizona. And the kids and I have been living out here for the past 7 years. So that's my history. We're coming up on 30 minutes, and I need to get this uploaded. So I do appreciate you guys listening. I hope this kind of sheds some light on, why I'm so untrusting when it comes to people, why I don't want to show my face, why after being abused for 27 years and then living in fear, I don't trust very easily. So I don't know if I'm going to post this weekend. I hope that I'm going to be able to find a chance to. Some stuff happened today, and I have to have a chance to process it, so to speak. So anyways, you guys have a wonderful day. Thanks so much for listening. All right, bye.